You look across the desk at the 24-year-old slouched opposite you. His ripped jeans don't exactly scream business casual, but he's here applying for your marketing job, and he's brought his mom for support. You push past your confusion and try to break the ice. How was your day? He avoids eye contact, muttering, "Good," and not to be rude, but I don't really want to know how your day has been going. Things are off to a great start. Still, you press on. Why do you want to work here? He briefly looks up and mutters, "I'm really excited to help market and sell solar panels. The only problem is you're a pharmaceutical company. Looks like it's going to be a pass." According to a lot of Gen Zers themselves, some or all of those things happen when they interview for a job. They don't like or even know how to make small talk, and they'll say so. 26% of them have brought a parent to a job interview, and 61% of Gen Z has been diagnosed with anxiety, which makes it hard for them to prepare or even research what a company does ahead of an interview, as multiple stories show. How did they get this way? And how and why is Gen Z struggling so much? On today's episode of The Infographic Show, we'll examine why Gen Z struggles to handle real life. Many older people think Gen Z is an antisocial, lonely generation who prefers to avoid others if they can help it, and a lot of Gen Z agrees with them. The prospect of mixing the work and the social worlds gives me a headache. I can see myself in a decorated conference room, washing down a catering taco with a lukewarm White Claw. I feel like my head could explode. Gen Z employee Jonah Nink didn't just avoid social events at work, he wrote an entire article about it titled, "I'm Gen Z and avoid all social events at my job." He admits that people his age are likely to keep socialization and their work life completely separate. But this doesn't set them up for success. Even Nick realizes that. In the same article, he admits one of the only reasons his dad kept his job during the Great Recession was because of the great relationships he had developed. And the problem isn't just that Gen Z would rather not go to the occasional work happy hour or company Christmas party, but they seem to have trouble handling any difficult social tasks or conversations at all. Many managers online, even those who generally like Gen Z workers, talk about how their inability to communicate and have difficult conversations is a real problem. Many will straight up ghost their workplace instead of giving 2 weeks' notice, which also explains a lot of the problem with modern dating. Global accounting giants Deloitte and PricewaterhouseCoopers have found themselves in uncharted territory. They have to provide their Gen Z employees in the UK with basic lessons on handling in-person meetings and presentations, skills previous generations seem to acquire naturally. And university professors are teaching courses on making small talk. Students now have lectures on how learning and using the name of the person they're speaking to is important. We're being serious. So why does Gen Z have such bad social skills? Part of the problem is the disruption the pandemic caused. During some of Gen Z's most formative years, middle school, high school, and college, they were stuck at home with their parents rather than learning to interact with peers and classmates. One study in Canada found, after remote learning and studying, 25% of Gen Zers said their verbal skills had gotten worse, and 50% thought their overall social skills declined. Career and leadership coach Sheena Mystery sees many Gen Z workers struggling to maintain eye contact or articulate their thoughts clearly. The problem is that many young people don't think this is actually causing much of a problem. Scott Silverman, a dean of external programs at Santa Monica College, said, "We are seeing less confidence in normal person-to-person interactions. And what's worse, no self-awareness of the deficiency in those skills." Mystery gives a specific example of these social problems. "I recall one instance where a highly skilled Gen Z employee, during a face-to-face feedback session, was more focused on their phone than the conversation, missing crucial information from their manager. This brings us to another problem. Gen Z definitely spends too much time on their phones, mostly on social media, which ironically does not train people to become social. And they know it's an issue. One Gen Zer says, "The reason people are not happy, have communication issues, focus issues, and all sorts of dedication issues stems from social media and short-form content in general. It affects their ability to produce productive long-term work, the ability to genuinely connect with people, and their attention span. Basically, anything that helps you find success and happiness in life gets obliterated." Gen Z spends an average of 6 hours and 5 minutes on their phones every day. That's almost the same as the average American sleeps in a day. In comparison, millennials spend about 4 hours and 36 minutes, while boomers spend an average of 3 hours and 31 minutes. But what are they doing on their phones? Maybe they're looking up some information, learning a language. Well, it turns out, no. They're mostly on TikTok, as they spend an average of just over 3 hours daily on social media. Except social media has turned out to be the worst thing for actual socializing and friendships. But more on that soon. A large part of the blame for the lack of social skills falls on parents, specifically helicopter parents. Their overprotective tendencies are a major reason why Gen Z struggles with real life. So if you're a part of an older generation and you thought you'd be left out of this episode, think again. While helicopter parents existed before, they were nowhere near as controlling or terrified as they are now. One 2022 study showed that 83% of parents showed behavior of helicopter parenting, and even though they think they're protecting their kids, what they're doing is leaving them completely unprepared to function as independent adults. Historically, this is one of the safest times to be alive. According to the BBC, the likelihood of a violent death has never been lower. But you would never have known it listening to your average modern parent. According to them, their Gen Z children are in mortal danger at all times, and they need supervision. And how can parents not be scared when the media says 460,000 children go missing every year? Do you know where your children are? But that number, unsurprisingly, is misleading. Because if it were real, you would personally know at least a handful of abducted kids. The 460,000 number includes every time a parent calls the police worried because their teen is out past curfew. So what is the real number of missing kids we would consider seriously missing? 105. And most of them are teens, and 92% of them make it home safe, meaning the likelihood of getting kidnapped is 1 in 720,000. To put that into context, the likelihood of dying by a hornet, wasp, or bee sting is just around 1 in 47,000. The likelihood of getting killed by lightning is just under 1 in 188,000. Both are much more likely than getting kidnapped. But that doesn't matter because parents will excuse their helicopter parenting by saying, "Back in my day, things were safer overall. We didn't have people running around committing crimes." And they would be lying. The U.S. murder rate in 2019 was 5 per 100,000 people. The U.S. murder rate in 1960 was 5.1. And Gen X parents might want to sit this one out because the murder rate in 1970 and 1980 when they were kids and teens was respectively 7.9 and 10.2. Given modern fears, it's amazing anyone left their house during the Reagan era. But a combination of these unjustified fears amplified by the media and the relentless pressure for kids to succeed have created a perfect storm. Many Gen Z teens have little to no unstructured or unsupervised time to explore, fail, and grow independently. Historian Stephen Mintz points out that growing up involves risk-taking, exploration, increasing responsibilities and competence, and regular social interaction with siblings, peers, kin, and non-kin. And Gen Z kids are getting none of that. To protect them from invisible dangers and make their college applications competitive, parents enroll them in advanced courses, tutoring sessions, and any extracurricular activities they can find. And this has been tied to some good outcomes. Gen Z is more likely to graduate from high school and college than previous generations. They're also less likely to smoke, drink, or do drugs, and they're less likely to become pregnant teens. But they're also less happy and confident than ever. And this is because helicopter parenting, according to Parents Magazine, destroys kids' self-confidence, independence, and problem-solving skills. And this brings us to one of the biggest struggles of all. Gen Z is struggling to get and hold a job. Because parents are now so involved in their kids' lives that 25% of Gen Z kids take parents with them to job interviews. As you can imagine, this makes a terrible impression. Businesses find it hard to believe that you're a self-starter if you need mom to hold your hand through an interview. And the problems with Gen Z in the workforce don't end there. Because even when they manage to get the job, they often can't keep it. According to ResumeBuilder.com, 74% of managers said that Gen Z is more difficult to work with than any other generation. One former HR director says, "The comments about Gen Z's lack of problem-solving skills are too real. I'm guessing helicopter parents and/or micromanaging teachers caused this. Probably good-intentioned, but it really set a lot of Gen Z workers up for failure." This may be why 49% of workers find Gen Z difficult to work with most or all of the time. Only 4% surveyed said they never find working with Gen Z difficult. And this could explain why Gen Z faces higher termination rates than any other generation. A staggering 46% of business leaders and managers say it is somewhat more common to let go of Gen Z workers, while 19% admit it is much more common. Sometimes managers find that new young workers are so lacking in social skills, soft skills, and problem-solving skills that they end up firing them almost immediately. 27% of bosses say they have fired a Gen Z employee within their first month at work, while 20% more say that they've fired a Gen Z employee within the first week of work. Why is Gen Z failing so badly at working in office environments? Well, part of it might be that they're used to remote learning and work, or that they have the least experience working than any other generation before them. Gen Z is pressured to focus on their studies, and part-time jobs pay too little to be a big financial help for college or any other big purchase. So rates of working among high school and college students have been steadily dropping. 41% of Gen X teens were working in 1986. By 2002, only 27% of millennials were working, and in 2018, only 18% of Gen Z teens worked. This was before remote work took off and made Gen Z even less able to function in a social office environment. It's no wonder Gen Z doesn't have the social and soft skills needed for a work environment if they have never worked. However, the top reasons managers find Gen Z hard to work with may be surprising, and it is one of the big reasons they can't handle real life. They lack technological skills. Despite growing up in the digital age, 39% of managers say the biggest issue is Gen Z's lack of technological skills. Isn't Gen Z supposed to be the tech generation? People who have used iPads and iPhones since before they could do long division? Well, it turns out that may be the problem. Newer tech is very user-friendly, and many teens and young adults get used to their easy-to-use touchpad interface. Gen Z is less competent with computers than the average millennial and Gen Xer. As one manager said, "Something I did not expect about having Gen Z coworkers was having to teach Gen Z and baby boomers the same computer skills." Gen Z might say they don't care what employers think of them. After all, 77% of their generation considers work-life balance a top priority. But it turns out they're not doing so hot on the life part of that balance either. Gen Z is more isolated than ever, with 53% of them reporting feeling lonely. Americans of all ages are finding fewer friends as time goes on, but the difference is really striking when it comes to Gen Z. Since 2022, friendship applications have started flooding TikTok and Facebook. Young people who feel lonely talk about their interests and a desire to find a friend, and people who live close to them and are interested respond. Because friends these days are hard to come by, and the results of isolation are not good at all. But more details on that later in the video. In 2003, 18 to 29-year-olds had an average of 8.9 friends. Meanwhile, the Pew Research Center found that in 2023, only 32% of adults under 30 reported having 5 or more friends. Gen Z might respond that having a couple of very close friendships is better than a big circle, and that they prefer to spend a lot of time alone. Unfortunately, science doesn't agree with them. Casual friends or fringe friends, those weak social ties other generations had tons of, are really important in life for several reasons. Practically, they connect people to opportunities, whether for jobs or romantic prospects, in a way that exclusively socializing with your 2 buddies on Discord just won't do. Daniel Cox from the American Enterprise Institute says, "Even for close friends, the more you have, the better you do on a variety of measures. Whether it's loneliness, whether it's physical health, life satisfaction, all of these things are higher when you hit 4 or 5 or 6 friends. Not to mention that having ties to different people gives you a variety of perspectives about the world. One of the great things about the internet was that people were able to log online and find others who were exactly like them. One of the worst things about the internet is that people log online to talk only to people who are exactly like them. This phenomenon, known as homophily, doesn't just contribute to the growing polarization of society. It also hinders Gen Z's ability to navigate real life. By surrounding themselves with like-minded individuals, many Gen Zers struggle to have difficult conversations with people from different backgrounds and perspectives. And all of this disconnection is making Gen Z less trusting as well. In a 2022 Pew survey, only 34% of American adults under the age of 30 agreed that most people could be trusted, the lowest of any age group. Many people argue that with so much time spent working and trying to make ends meet, no one has the time to socialize anymore, but that is not true. From 2017 to 2022, The average time spent working per week has changed 0%. TV watching has gone up less than 1%, and housework is up 3.5%. Meanwhile, the amount of weekday socializing people do has decreased by almost 19%. What has gone up is sleep. In 2022, adults in their 20s got an average of 9 hours and 28 minutes of sleep. That is an 8% increase from 2010, and that is not a good thing. The CDC recommends Americans get at least 7 hours, but way more isn't good for you. Johns Hopkins neurologist and sleep specialist Dr. Charlene Gamaldo says that people who regularly sleep more than 8 or 9 hours a night may have medical issues. It also causes fatigue and drowsiness throughout the day, maybe explaining Gen Z's lack of effort at the office. And it's tied to long-term health problems. And the average hours of sleep for Gen Z being medically troubling is not a good sign. In addition to loneliness and a lack of social networks, it's tied to their other big struggles such as depression and anxiety. It's no secret that teens and young adults today struggle with mental health more than any other generation that came before them. 42% are diagnosed with mental health conditions, and almost 60% are on medication for their mental health. Gen Z is officially the most depressed and anxious generation, a title that no one wants. Depression and anxiety, unsurprisingly, make it extra hard for people to cope with real life. Many of these mental health issues come not from loneliness, but something else that endless scrolling in social media has created, a feeling of hopelessness about the future. Search the internet for Gen Z opinions about their life, and you will quickly start to feel depressed and defeated. One Gen Zer sums it up like so: Gen X was happy in their 20s because they had a good future in front of them. Millennials were happy because they thought they had a good future in front of them, but then discovered it was a lie later in life and are unhappy now. Gen Z is not even lying to themselves. They know they're in trouble. Statistics agree. 85% of Gen Z told Pew that they're worried about their future. Though most of them are concerned about their own financial situation, politics and climate change also top to their list of things to worry about. Endless doom scrolling, as well as the 24-hour news cycle that blasts viewers with constant horrific updates about the world, doesn't help this mindset. When boomers were growing up, they weren't pelted with updates about every possible tragedy around the world all day, every day. There was a news hour and a newspaper, and that was kinda it. Now, to be fair, there are real reasons to be concerned. Gen Z is the first generation since teens back in 1957 and 1958 to go through a pandemic. The world is already seeing the first effects of climate change, and everyone's predicting that their futures will be worse than the previous generations. Pew Research reports that 76% of Gen Zers say climate change is one of their biggest concerns, and 37% say it's their top concern. Environmental studies teacher Sarah Jaquette Ray said Gen Z's hyper-awareness of climate change and negative future projections is traumatizing a huge chunk of the generation. But instead of inspiring change or action, the doom cycle seems to be inspiring hopelessness. According to her, Gen Z talks of an apocalypse on the horizon. Some students become so overwhelmed with despair and grief that they shut down. It's no surprise, then, that 85% of Gen Z say they're worried about their future, and nearly 90% of them say they don't feel set up for success. One Gen Zer summed up their frustration in the following way: "When we were given a dying planet on a silver platter, told to go to college for just the economy to tank, kids get shot in classrooms, and women don't even have the right to their own bodies, we are living in hell, and y'all want us to smile about it, and we aren't." And on that doomsday note, if you're a member of Gen Z, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. In the meantime, check out Every Generation Explained in 10 minutes to get your mind off your troubles, or click on this video instead.